episode of Shadows from the Tree, we delve into the darker side of genealogy by exploring stories pulled from newspaper archives and using historical records to find the truth behind them. Specifically, the episode focuses on the theme of adoption and the impact it had on the lives of those involved. Join us as we shed light on those often overlooked stories and gain a deeper understanding of the challenges those involved face in hope of connecting you, our listeners, with their stories.
All right, so this week I will go first. My story about adoption. I found an article in the Buffalo Times, so Buffalo, New York, but the story is actually based in Charlestown, Mass, so Boston area. So they're Boston based.
You know, it's well known if they start posting it in other states.
So there were the main article I found was shorter. It had one picture and you keep going, you keep digging, and then I found a 2-page spread of pictures and all this. I can't wait till you post this because
I cannot wait.
It's very interesting. So the title of this specific one from Buffalo was Amazing 100 Million to 1 Love Gamble. Science Stunned by the Sweetheart Twins, who were drawn together by a secret blood tie.
Whoa, that sounds juicy.
Yeah. So it starts where these two people were engaged.
Okay.
So James Brady and Josephine Buckley. All right. So they were planning to get married.
I'm smirking over here because wait till you hear one of the names of my story, which is a weird coincidence, but go for it.
Okay. So they went to their local church. They were going to get married in a Catholic church, Irish Catholics. So they needed to provide birth certificates because, in the Catholic church, you're not allowed to marry second, third cousins. So they make sure there's no relations.
Okay.
So according to James Brady, he knew he was adopted. So he was like trying to find information about his birth certificate.
Because he doesn't want to be a cousin, yep.
Right. So Josephine actually got adopted by an aunt, her father's sister-in-law, I believe. Yeah, because her uncle was her dad's brother. So there's that. And then come to find out, the priest did some digging and found James' birth certificate.
Oh.
But he wasn't a Brady. He was originally also a Buckley.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So the story...
At this point, had they been dating?
Yeah.
For a while?
Yeah. They had actually gone to school together.
Oh,
they
wow.
went to dances together. They were sweethearts and... So, yeah, awkward, right?
That'd make you a little flush in the face.
Yeah, so, so the priest, Reverend, he actually found their birth certificates, and I had actually, the article I'm reading from has, I'll show you, has pictures of them, but I had found these before I found this article. So
that's crazy.
So I saw these documents first from the Massachusetts Vital Records.
Oh my God, please don't tell me they're twins.
They are twins.
Oh, wait.
They are twins.
Time out.
Yes. Their birthdays are December 27th, 1904. They are twins. And I thought you would love this story, being a twin.
I can't even, because I'm looking at that picture of the two baby photos side by side. That is crazy.
Right?
Holy moly.
Yep. So the article actually has a quote from her. So it says right here, but let's let Josephine Buckley tell the remarkable story in her own words, which carry far deeper conviction than, those of an outsider. So this is what Josephine Buckley had to say. She said, "People think I'm sad because I found out my fiancé was my brother. That's foolish," she says. "Why, we're both glad, thrillingly happy because all of this happened. Which you can't understand unless yourself happen to be a twin. Twins are funny. They just have to be together to share everything. To separate twins is like taking 2 roses on one stalk out of the water. One will die. I believe that I've died from lonesomeness long ago unless I'd been sure in my heart that someday I'd find Jimmy. You see, even though we've been apart since we were tiny kids, I remember him, not his face, but his soul. and he remembered mine.
Oh, that's kind of sweet at the end. I'm still kind of a little
I know.
interested in the part that they were
separated. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So I did some more digging. You know, they mentioned a mother passing away, so I did find out their mom.
Okay.
Her mom's name was Nellie. So she actually had passed away in 1908.
Okay.
And then the father had a real tough time. His name was also James. He ended up being an alcoholic and wasn't taking care of the twins, so he dumped them with his, I believe, with an orphanage.
Okay.
And it says, several weeks. It was they took him to he took them to an orphanage, but then an uncle and aunt, Margaret and Uncle Michael Buckley, took them home to Tremont Street.
Wow.
In Boston. But
what year was that? Like, how long had they been?
I believe it was 1909 or 1910. Because,
it's only like a year or two.
Because on the 1910 census, Josephine is with Michael and Margaret.
Okay.
But Jimmy is not. Jimmy
Makes you wonder, why didn't the aunt and uncle take the other twin? Like, why didn't they want to separate them?
They said that he was harder to handle. He liked to knock things around and play hide.
He was like 2, yeah.
I know. He was like, I think he was like 5 or 6.
Oh.
And I don't know. She just didn't take the brother.
Oh, that's hard.
But they promised Josephine that they would go visit him every month.
Oh.
So they went the first month, and then by the time the second month came around, they said that he had gone out they'd sent him to the country.
Oh.
So
that's so sad.
I know. So she lost touch with him, but I guess they ended up attending the same schools, and they didn't know.
That's just like, in a way, fate.
Yeah, yeah. It's
in a weird, strange
really,
way.
Yeah.
But
they were very connected.
Wow.
And there's so many pictures, and they just
wow.
There's lots of stories. So they went to grammar school. So they're always saying, I was thinking of my long lost twin. And she always said she had like images of her twin, and he like parted his hair the same way. And
is it like that in the picture?
Yeah, his hair is like straight, pin straight right down the middle.
Aww.
And he like reminisces about playing with a girl with a green coat, even though he can't like put a face to it. So they remembered each other, but they just couldn't put it together. And he only lived like 2 streets away.
It's just weird that no one else, or did the community know, did other people know that was him all along and just played it off as, you would think someone would give him a heads up though, like, hey, you're dating your brother.
No, I don't think anyone knew.
Yeah.
Nobody knew until this reverend pulled out the records, because the orphanage was through the Catholic Church.
Okay.
So they had the records of it, and he was adopted by John Brady and his wife Mary. John and Mary.
There you go.
And what they used to do was have a procession of the orphanage children during like a Sunday mass, and they would just have them walking down like all sad and and then
lonely.
They would be like, you want a kid, basically.
Wow.
So this family, they didn't have children at the time, so they decided to take him home. And
he must have straightened out.
Yeah.
Despite his 5-year-old behavior.
I don't know, like how bad can a fun little 5-year-old
who just lost their
who would separate twins?
I know, that's crazy. Yeah, so obviously being in our family cousins, I'm a twin, my husband's a twin, we have twin cousins, I have other twin cousins, my sister has twins, like it's just that's sad to think about.
Right.
Yeah.
Never separate twins. Even I don't know what this aunt was thinking. In the article it says because she had too many children already, but then in the census it was just Josephine to start with. So I couldn't see any other.
So maybe she wanted them in the future and thought that they could stop
she
them.
Couldn't, or maybe she was pregnant at the time. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Miscarriages happened all. Yeah.
Yeah, because there was like a Gertrude who was, it would be cousin. Because in the first census they listed Josephine as a niece. But then later on, she was a daughter.
Adopted, yeah.
So she was a daughter.
So so that was the birth certificate, but were these like actual proper adoption papers? Like, was there actual documentation of the adoption, or they just went to the family and went to whoever?
Went to the family. I don't think they had like court proceedings or anything like that back then. I think it was mostly done through a church agency. and it wasn't really a legalized form of identification, because even like trying to find records after, because the first article I find didn't say if they stay together or if they like
what happened to
or
them,
if this information was like a deal breaker or not. I was like, I don't think they get married.
That'd be a twist.
I was looking for marriage records, I was looking for all sorts of stuff, but then I found this, so they were kind of just like, I'm glad we found out. Okay. But there was a mention of another couple in New York who didn't find out until they got married that they were related. They shared a mother. And the church and like the police were after them, like they were in court, like they were gonna be arrested and fined.
How is that their fault? They didn't know.
Well, because they found out and then they didn't.
And then they continued
to stay in their marriage. So
oh boy, did that name them? Did like give their name? You don't have to find it now. I'm just curious.
It did. It gave their names. I can put it up later, but
wow,
that was another interesting part of it, because it was kind of like, unlike the other two, these two had sense.
Show me the picture one more time.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
you see them as babies.
They made her look like a porcelain doll.
It really did.
And really, because I was like, they didn't have Photoshop back then, but she doesn't look like a real person.
No.
But if you look at, like, this was the original picture that I found. Let me pull up that article. So that's what she looked like, really.
Oh yeah, that's different.
right? It looks like a painting versus like what were they doing? So this was the first article. So it says the romance undergoes startling turn when lovers find out they are twins.
Wow.
So
that
was
just
the first one I
mind-boggling. Yeah.
But it didn't mention if they had broken up in that one, so I had to keep looking.
Now, when you were searching this, were you just searching keywords like twin, adoption?
Adoption. I wanted to find a twin story just because. The family stuff. So I typed in, and then I was looking specifically in Massachusetts because I know they have a good vital records.
Easy to find
so
stuff.
I could find stuff, and this was the first one that popped up, and I was like, wow, that is intriguing to say the least.
Yeah, that's crazy. I found once when I was looking through some articles, I saved it just because I thought it was interesting. It was about two twins. I forget where they're from, but I'll post it. They were so identical that nobody could tell them apart, even the parents.
Wow.
And they would play tricks on, I think I just went, like when I was doing the Scandal episode, I was like, oh, this is interesting. They'd play tricks on the teacher. An expert even analyzed their handwriting, and their handwriting was exactly the same. And it was just like, they looked alike. And then I found out, looking through records, that one of the twins died young. And I was like, that is just hard, but they did everything together. They had even said if one fell down the stairs, the other fell down the stairs. Like, it was that crazy. And then to go on in life and then, why not make it? It was very sad. But, I mean, that's the connection sometimes that the twins have.
And then I tried to find, like, later in life what happened if they
Did they stay close? Were they neighbors? Yeah,
it said that the Brady and the Buckley families got together out more often, and they had, like, family celebrations. It looks like he got married. He was a veteran. He served in the military, and he ended up marrying and then had a daughter. I couldn't find if Josephine got married. She was on the census until, like, 1930, and then she wasn't with Margaret anymore. Like, her uncle had passed away, but I couldn't find her with Margaret Buckley anymore after that. So I don't know if she got married. They changed their name. And I couldn't find a marriage certificate because after 1924 to 30, like, do we have access to those records yet? Kind of like a little bit harder to find. But I did find his
So imagine you're this, like, granddaughter, right? Of this one of these twins, right?
Yeah.
And you stumble upon the fact that they once were married, almost married.
Almost.
That would be just a shocking story to come upon. I can't. Unfortunately, my family's not. Other than my one story we'll speak about, it hasn't been that interesting. But I do solely believe that it's not a matter of, if you're gonna find some kind of crazy weird story in your family, it's just when and how long it's gonna take to dig it out.
Oh, man.
That's crazy. Okay. Wow. Alrighty. So for my adoption story, I have a bad habit of being very picky about the article I find. Yeah. And I literally had about 3 or 4 that I was sort of going with until this whole issue of adoption came up, because I just ran into so many dead ends because the names would be changed. People didn't even know who they were. There wasn't DNA to actually put facts together. I'll post all the ones I found because they are still quite interesting, but there was one about a family who both parents were lost to suicide, and they all got dispersed, some through orphanages, some through family, like yours, like an aunt. The oldest kind of worked by himself just to try to raise money, and he was out trying to find his siblings. So I was following that for a little while, and that kind of just led to some dead ends, and I was following another one on actually an interesting part of history called baby farming.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So that was very interesting. In like the late 1800s, early 1900s, as it sounds, it was basically baby trafficking. Yes. People would have to pay if they were unwed mothers. They wanted to get rid of their babies for whatever reason, would sometimes pay these people who would have like spots in their home. There were some credible ones, but mostly not. And they would keep them and try to sell them and basically make money off of the babies, and were often in like bad conditions and would not make it. And so if you've never heard of it, do a deep dive. It started off in England actually, and people actually were hung for their behavior for this. There was like a famous one called Amelia Dyer in England who did this baby farming, and then some people would adopt them if they didn't have babies of their own and wanted them, or they had a farm and needed labor work, like just not good conditions. But I came across an interesting article about that, so it was kind of all over the place. But what I landed with was an interesting article that was tied into maternity houses. And there was a lot of maternity houses for people who were going to be having babies. And let me just read specifically, this is coming from the Fairmount Maternity Home, which is the home that was used in my story. And this is just an ad in the newspaper that's in 1915, coming out of Missouri, Kansas City. It's for confinement, publicity avoided, adoption free if desired, doctors, nurses' cares, kindness, and home comforts. Prices reasonable. Write for booklet. Call or address for T.B. Long, Office 2024, Montgale Ave, Kansas City, Missouri. Phones, home, East 332, Bell, East 2201. So I'm assuming they're not giving the actual location. 332 seems like a route that goes through Missouri, but you're lucky you have a baby, you need to deliver it, maybe you want to put it up for adoption, you see this ad and you, I guess, call and make arrangements. So there's a couple. There's another one nearby in Mount Washington Maternity Home. So that's sort of where my story kind of starts. So we have a woman named Louise Stewart, and her maiden name was Kennedy, and she seems to be coming off from a pretty well-to-do family in Kansas, and she goes to school, goes to high school, graduates, goes to like a secondary school, and that's where she meets Robert Stewart.
Okay.
Now, Robert Stewart is from a very wealthy family in Kansas. Like, I think it was said in the article, like one of the wealthiest families out of Kansas. So that's the Stewart family. And so they meet up, and then, she gets pregnant. Yeah. Okay, they're unmarried.
I like the music.
Yes. They're unmarried, and they must have the stories that I read is he didn't want to keep the baby, or they were going to put the baby in the home, and she was so young, not quite 18, that the baby would stay there for a few years, for a few months. He was, I think he was around the same age, quite young still. Yeah. And the baby would stay there, and then they would take the baby home after, things like that. But I just feel for this poor Louise, like having been young, right? She's pregnant. In the article, it says they didn't tell anybody. Right. So she had to keep it hidden.
Was her family well-to-do, or were they in
I think they seemed a little more well-off, for sure.
If she was going to like a secondary school, but she moved.
Yeah, a good point. Yeah, so I think they were good, and they arranged for this maternity home, and I'm just thinking, well, how would she up until this point have hid the pregnancy?
Yeah.
You know, very isolating, I'm sure. I'm sure she kept herself inside, or maybe she was off at school. We'll never know, but there's this interesting ad that I found in the newspaper, which I'll post. It's called the Gossard Maternity Corset. And it's saying, this corset will support you and protect you without exerting harmful or uncomfortable pressure. It will retain your symmetry and remove hesitation about appearing in public. It will do much to ensure a normal figure again after birth of your baby. And it will go far towards giving your baby a strong, shapely body. Your doctor will advise you to wear a maternity corset. Further, he will, as hundreds of other doctors and nurses are doing, recommend the corset, in particular because it is set to be scientifically and correctly designed. It is an obligation that every woman owes herself and her baby to avail herself for the support of a properly designed maternity corset. A fitting by an expert corsetier will not obligate you in any way and may save you long, irksome months of discomfort. Prices $3 and $5. So I found that it was just interesting that a lot of these women are probably wearing these corsets to potentially hide pregnancies, keep it at bay a little bit longer.
Oh, man. How uncomfortable.
Yeah, and there's a small picture, but I don't know how that could be healthy, but I don't know. To be sucking all that in.
It's not good.
Anyway, so that was just a side note. But and in the newspapers, too, I also found for this Fairmont different articles about babies that were up for adoption. So there was, like, in the miscellaneous section, it was for adoption, 3 fine baby boys, 3 baby girls, Fairmount Maternity Home Office, 2024, Montgale Ave. So that's how they would just post that there were babies available for those who wanted them. So, anywho, back to my story. So those two get married. They go to this maternity home. And that was, let me get the date of that. It was the beginning of February. And then I'm just going to jump to my article because that's kind of will be a little bit telling. So one of the paragraphs in the article is, a fight for possession of the child was between its natural mother and grandmother on one side and a foster mother and foster grandmother on the other. In order to obtain her child, the mother had to expose a secret in her past life, stating on the witness stand that she wanted the baby, regardless of what people said of her or what her husband would do. So then she sort of takes a stand and says that the child was first deeded to a couple in Kansas City when it was in the maternity home, who kept it for a short time and then brought it back to the maternity home. The manager of the home acknowledged on the witness stand that he had taken acid and removed the names of the Kansas City couple. What? And then when Mr. and Miss Lewis Wensler of Fairmount Township of this county came to the maternity home to get a baby and picked out this child, he inserted their names into the deed. Oh. So, yeah, so she has the baby. Someone takes it, doesn't want it, brings it back. He kind of fudges it and puts this new family, Mr. and Miss Lewis Wensler. And it was said that they paid the manager, which was that T.B. Long, they paid him $10 for the baby.
Oh, boy.
Yep. So then after the birth of the child in Kansas City, Mr. and Miss Stewart returned to their home in Allen County and notified their parents of their marriage because before they entered the home, they quickly got married a couple weeks earlier in February of 1915. And there was a newspaper article, and I'll tell you how I found that one after, but it was listed in the newspaper as a marriage license for both of them. Mm-hmm. She was aged 18 and he was aged 22. Okay. So back to the story here. So they had a baby. And so at this point they're in court. So it had gone to a court case. And it was said that Judge Wendorf decided that the baby had not been properly deeded or bounded over to the Wenslers and that the mother should have the baby. So in the end, the mother received her baby back. And I was laughing earlier because the baby in this article was named Josephine. So I was like, oh, that's so funny. So the baby was named Josephine. And you do feel, because of the way they wrote the article, you feel for the family. So this one said, Judge Wendorf rendered a decision awarding the child to its mother, Miss Louise Stewart. Miss Lily Wensler, the foster mother of the child, who had tenderly cared for the infant for the past 7 months, cried aloud and was hysterical when the decision was given to take the child from her. She was joined in the weeping by her husband, Louis Wensler, and his mother, Miss Wensler, all three of whom seemed deeply attached to the little one.
Yeah,
so
that's really hard.
I mean, in the end, it's great that the mother got it back, because there's always that bond between the mother and the baby. But then also, they had taken good care of her and thought that they were her forever baby, And they had said that even when they picked the Josephine up for from the maternity home, the Wenslers, that there was all like, her head was all broken out in weird rash, and there was no clothing. So, luckily they came along. So that was, that's sort of where that article led off. But here's another part where it said, Miss Stewart was placed on the witness stand, and she had to tell all about their past life and went through in a quiet manner without flinching. She said that she wanted her baby no different what people said about her or what happened. Miss Wensler Jr. took the witness stand for her side, telling of the adoption of the baby and of the way they cared for it. She showed that she had a very deep affection for the baby and maintained that she thought more of it than anyone ever could.
Did they ever get to see the baby again?
I know. I was looking. I'm like, were they close neighbors? Or they, and I didn't.
Or were they pinned against each other?
I know.
They were kind of
So I started digging, because I was like, whatever happened to the Wenslers, who deeply wanted to care for a child, and they were very well-to-do farmers.
Yeah.
And in one of the censuses I found, I think it was 1930, I attached it back to them having a child who was born in 1916.
Okay.
So I have a few theories.
Later, yeah.
So maybe they had their own child.
Yeah.
Or maybe they went back and adopted. So that was them. Going back off of Louise Stewart, this is where it got really cool for me, because when I started digging into records, there was someone on Ancestry who had done a ton of records for their own family. Kudos, because it was really well done. Lots of photos and documents and just a ton of information going back. It was really great. Good. So I started sort of using that as a source of what documents there were. Some really great photos of this Josephine.
Aww.
But this is where it got tricky, because this one person I kept on coming back to was not named Josephine.
Oh.
It was named Elizabeth Stewart. So I have a checklist of everything that matched. I mean, everything matched. The date of the birth, which was February 19, 1915. Yeah. The city that she was born, Kansas City, Missouri. The fact that in the article it mentioned that Miss Kelly, who was Louise's mother, had been remarried. It was her youngest daughter who was on the stand. Their marriage date added up. Robert being the son of a wealthy Allen County family. There's not a ton out there, Let's see. The age of the baby. I mean, everything was just adding up. So
was that her middle name?
So I have a couple theories on this, and I think my main hunch is that what if Josephine was either the adopted name given by the Wenslers? Yeah. Maybe they didn't name the baby when, if she's giving up her baby, or who knows? I think there was something happening. Also, was it named Josephine to protect the name in the article?
Yeah.
I don't know, but it is coincidentally adds up.
All the dates, all the
all the dates
to be the right person.
And so that's when because I'm not shy, so I message on Ancestry, the person who collected all this data and all this information, and I said, hey, I just found this article. I'm finding a lot of similarities. Just wondering if you have any information. And surprisingly, he responded, because sometimes it's touch or go, whether some people want to give information out or not. And he agreed that a lot of the stuff in the information matched. The grandmother's name, like, there was too much to match to not be it. Mm-hmm. So they had always gone by this girl as Elizabeth Stewart, not Josephine. But I get to hear a little bit of insight. So his first reaction when I sent the article was, wow. And he said, yeah, a lot of things do add up. And then he said, I can't hardly wait to show his sisters. And I think that's the fun part about genealogy. Yeah. By even me and you, I'm like, oh my gosh, can't wait for you to see this. Or, when you find something about your family, you just want to share it out with other people in your family who are enjoying genealogy. Mm-hmm. But he had said that his grandparents had always said, so his grandparents would have been Louise and Robert. So he said his grandparents always said that they were married in 1914, but he started disproving that by newspapers.com when he found the license and everything. Yeah. So he said that he was not surprised at all that there could have been this adoption because the family was very Catholic, and being wealthy in the family, you're going to want to hide that. Mm-hmm. So he told me that, and he also agreed that the name Josephine could have been, just another given name. But the sad part about my story is that this Josephine Elizabeth, passed away at 20 years old. Mm. She had an appendicitis, which ended up being okay, but then it resulted in pneumonia. But she had graduated. It seemed like she was very loved by the community, and had a good family and friends. So that was a little sad to hear. But her parents, Robert and Louise, had a total, including Elizabeth, 8 children.
Wowie.
So she would have been the first. Yeah, it's a big family. Yeah, it's a big family. And at some points they lived on their farm, but seemed to remain in Kansas for most of their lives. So I just loved making that connection with someone because it's actually putting a story that I found that they also agreed with. It was just, it was really cool. So that's my story, and I put a few notes that I was just thinking about when I was like driving and just thinking about adoption, right?
Yeah.
How this ties to genealogy. Like, there's just, even these baby farmings, like people just dropping off babies, no documentation whatsoever.
Right.
At all. Lack of any formal adoption process, less regulated. It did seem like there were some closed and open adoptions happening during that time period.
Right.
But there was limited legal rights, so to obtain birth records, even if you were adopted, just everything. People living in harmful environments, it's just wild.
When I was researching, I found like they were starting to make legislation in like the 20s and 30s in certain states about like how to legalize adoptions. Good. To have like parents' names changed on, like the legal guardianship kind of.
Yeah, thank goodness, because it's, I don't know, it's a mixed bag. There are some people out there who are I don't know if you've ever watched Long Lost Relatives. Great show. And they do a lot of trying to find adopted parents with children. Yeah. But that's a great show, and it's torn. Some people rather know and some people don't, and obviously that's your own call when it's you. I did know there was the author of Little Women, Louisa May Alcott, was adopted. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. I found that tidbit out.
I love that book.
You knew right away. Yeah. But yeah, so that was my story, and there are a bazillion other people in the 19th century who were out there looking for their adopted families, and in our case, they were put back together.
Yeah. Long lost, found each other.
Yep.
That invisible string,
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yep. But awesome. Well, thank you for listening. We're going to do a couple more episodes, and we've been dying to share our own family story with you guys. So just keep listening, and that will be here before you know it.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.